I'm sorry, too zesty for you?
You're listening to Comics Podcasting on the Edge of Civility.
Hi, kids. Welcome to episode 77 of The Mean Geek. Comics Podcasting on the Edge of Civility. It's an interesting one tonight. We're going to have a lot of random, nasty, mean, high-volume, swearing fucking opinion tonight. You want to start with the, say hi, Rev.
Hi, Rev.
Good, very good. It's about time you did what you're told.
Hi, Rev.
Okay, don't pull that shit now.
Hi, Rev.
No, I knew you were going to do that.
See, you know?
Okay, are you done?
No.
The big fat news this week.
You have big fat news?
Huge news. Not we. Industry news.
Oh, okay.
DC and its never-ending wisdom and need, I guess, to fuck itself over again and again and again, has decided to restart their fucking line again.
Completely, right? Every single
Complete
book.
52 books, starting from new number ones with tweaked costumes, tweaked backstory, tweaked origins.
New creative teams or the same?
They haven't mentioned that, but Jeff Johns is in front of it all with Jim Lee right at his side.
Now, they're also introducing a whole bunch of new books, right?
There's obviously going to be a few new ones. They got to fill out 52 somehow. So, yeah, there'll be a few. I don't know which ones are which. I mean, this is literally just a couple of days old now, and they haven't released too much. It makes everything we're reading right this minute, everything we're going to talk about tonight, moot.
Good word, moot.
It angers me.
Well, I mean, look at Marvel. Marvel's currently revamping the Ultimate line, which means that the line of strictly revamps has had enough fucked up continuity to have to be scrapped and revamped.
But it doesn't have to be. It's not that old.
Well, it's not even that important. Like, the whole point of the Ultimate line is to ignore all the continuity and redo the major stories and the key graphics their own way. So suddenly, within 5 years, they're like, oops, we've already screwed the continuity up so badly, we're going to start all over again. So apparently every 5 years there'll be a new Ultimate line, which takes the word ultimate and pretty much pisses all over it.
Well, I mean, I've never been truly impressed with the Ultimate line. I mean, there's been a few things I dug out of it here and there.
That's not true.
What?
I mean, you've enjoyed... think about the original Vamp. Like, obviously you didn't
What'd I
do
just
Ultimate.
say? There's a few things I dug here and there.
Well, that was almost all of it. Ultimate Spider-Man you enjoyed.
Yeah.
Ultimate Fantastic Four you enjoyed.
I didn't read all of either of them.
Fair enough. But what you read of the early... When it first came out, you had 4 basic books. The Ultimates, which you enjoyed.
The first one, yes.
Ultimate Spider-Man, which you enjoyed.
Yes.
Ultimate Fantastic Four, which you enjoyed.
Yes.
And Ultimate X-Men, which you didn't read because it had the word X-Men in it.
Yes.
So the original concepts of the Ultimates you were totally a fan of.
At first, yes.
And then Ultimate Galactus, and Ultimate Nightmare, and Ultimate Armor Wars, and Ultimate Thor, Ultimate Cap, and
Ultimates 2, Ultimates 3,
Ultimate Slapstick.
Ultimate Jackassery. It all went by the wayside eventually. But that doesn't... just because they fell into bad stories doesn't mean that the continuity within those stories was no good. You know?
Right.
I mean, I don't... Like I said, I didn't read all of the Ultimate Anythings. But where did the continuity go wrong that they have to go from scratch? You know? If you want to say it's a continuity problem, then tell me what story conflicts with what story and why, and then just say, fuck it, this thing didn't really happen. Go away. Come on. But that's not DC either. This is the third time that they're trying to go crazy with this shit. The Crisis on Infinite Earths,
Yeah.
which, albeit, happened 25 odd years ago. That, whew, we all know what that one was about.
Right.
They killed a lot of people. They unified the multiverse. Now Grant Morrison wants another multiverse. The lateral slapdiverse, or whatever the fuck he feels like calling it this week. Don't know what he's gonna do. There's 3 books in all of comics that have been unchanged in their numbering, and even one of those was on hiatus for a while and technically stopped and restarted again. But Detective and Batman are the only 2 books that have not had a stop, hiatus, or a renumber since they began 70 years ago. So they're just going to take that because they feel that some random reader is going to say, there's 800 issues, I can't start with that. They don't have to start with that. They got to start with Crisis.
Well, that's not even the point. I mean, right now, Batman isn't even Batman. So, really, does the numbering... Once you have a different character running around in the same costume, there have been 7 Robins. Like, is really the numbering the key fact? Like, that's the purest part, is the number?
Yeah, so why not keep it and call it even?
I don't know. I think it'd be cool to
Just do another arc,
issue 1000. That's what they're losing out on.
which would be awesome. I'm a sucker for that shit, so of course I'm going to like that.
Yeah, but you're a sucker for number ones, too, so...
Not really. There's plenty of number ones I never bothered with.
Batman number ones?
Well, yeah. They're Batman-related number ones that I never touched. But I wish they'd tell us which ones are doing what. I guess we'll get that next week, maybe the week after. I mean, it's already June, and it's going to happen in September, so they ain't got that much time to get us hyped and excited about it and release something that they'll try to get us to accept all this shit
Well,
with.
there's a collectible pin set for each new number one.
What? Is there?
Yeah.
I don't care about a pin.
Hey, you know, go. I believe.
The fuck I need a pin for?
Well, it'll go nicely with all those power rings they did.
I don't see how the pin fits in the theme of Flashpoint. The last time somebody tried anything quite this fashion, Heroes Reborn. Another Jim Lee product. I don't know, my man. He wants to keep starting things over, making them fresh for new readers. How is unless they start promoting this on TV, in front of movies in the theater, on non-comic websites, people who aren't reading comics are never going to know this is fucking happening.
It's true.
So how is that helping to get them in? I mean, have you ever spoken... now, this is a question. I don't expect an answer to go my way here. If it does, then phenomenal. But have you ever spoken to someone who didn't read comics?
Constantly.
Listen.
Oh. Wait.
That expressed an interest in reading comics, but was not curious enough to ask anybody about comics and just held back for fear of being lost? Have you ever met somebody like that? Ever in your life? You've been reading comics 30 fucking years, right?
More like 25. But I have had people who have never read comics
Yeah.
express an interest in comics.
Yeah. And what stopped them?
Generally, it's a confusing world to enter.
Yeah, but it's not like they're going it alone.
Right, but I'm talking about, most kids aren't, I'm 30-something years old. Sadly I don't remember. I don't get a lot of, small children asking me these questions. It's generally people who have read about things, been watching movies and ask questions. And it is a huge backstory to try and pick up on. It's not like Sherlock Holmes where you buy 8 books and you have a complete series. You know? Comics is some confusing shit, and a lot of it's contradictory and weird, and multiple creators and different outlooks.
But you've got no way to know it's contradictory, etc., until you start actually reading it.
Yes, but if you pick up the comic industry no longer... And the fact of the matter is that you're not entirely being fair, because when you were a kid, if you picked up a book for the first time, generally you could get a fairly good understanding of what was going on.
You mean a novel?
No, I mean a comic book.
Oh, yeah. Well, there were a whole lot fewer, 6-issue arcs then.
Yeah, or epics.
There were a lot more done-in-ones, etc. And they're making progress on the way Chris Claremont used to do things. Is like every other fucking panel, he would do a minor flashback to what happened previously to explain who you're looking at and what their point of existence was. But sometimes it was 1 sentence, 2 sentences, but it was splattered throughout the issue.
Sometimes, but you know what? I mean, Claremont is basically, in many ways, responsible for some of it, because the X-Men was so convoluted and there was so much backstory and everyone was related.
But what I was getting to with that is now they're doing the splash page catch-ups. The
Sometimes.
previously on.
But even that is so convoluted and confusing. Like, you brought issue 3 of Herc.
Yeah, because I didn't pay attention to the number on it.
Right, and so I hadn't seen 1 or 2. One of the books that we're going to be reviewing tonight is Herc 3, and it's got that 1-page splash page, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? That splash page did not invite me to want to jump suddenly into that book. Like, yeah, I had a base idea of what had happened previously. But, reading 2 paragraphs doesn't make you suddenly excited about the rest of it. And even the books without those, or in particular, you cannot just dive into comics anymore. It's not an inviting market.
Well, you can't do that with many TV shows now either. So whoopity fuck.
It's true, but that's why there's constantly new TV shows coming out.
And there's constantly new books coming out.
And actually, I'd say it would be much easier to dive into a television show than a comic book.
Why?
Because it's usually a season arc, for the most part. Yes, there's some carry-ons and whatnot, but a lot of stuff is resolved. And they have a much better trend of discussing what had happened in the episodes. You go to like a CSI or a House, there's a lot of detail that gets carried on. Just you 2 shows that have been around for a while now.
Yeah, most of it gets reset from the beginning, though, so...
And most television shows aren't... 24, Lost, Fringe, these are shows that are hard to dive into. But these are 3 or 4 core fan-based shows. And it's also available to get every previous episode with relative ease, by purchase or by rent or by illegal download, depending on your particular, poison of choice. You can't just catch up on the history of any of these other books.
Sure you can.
That's not true.
They got wiki entries, they got Marvel encyclopedias. There is no reason you cannot catch yourself up very quickly on what's going on.
First off, I've read some of the Marvel and DC Wikipedia entries, and it's not like it's filling you in on everything that's ever happened in these books. Alright, it is a bare bone, which is fine.
It's not fucking necessary to know everything that's ever
But
gone on
sometimes it
previously.
is.
No, you need points here and there.
Dude, Secret Warriors.
Yeah.
Pick one up. Pick up issue 27 without reading the first 26. See how that feels.
But that's only 26. You can read an article on Newsarama and be caught up about that.
It's not the same thing. I'm sorry, it's just not.
I don't understand the fucking problem here. Why is it necessary to know every last fucking thing?
It's not necessary to know every last fucking thing, but some
Well,
of these
you
books
made it a
require.
particular point,
But you're
said it doesn't. You can't know everything.
But you're comparing it to a television show where you can. So it's not the same thing. That's my point.
Secret Warriors is 27 lousy issues. That's 1 season of television.
But you can find a box set. You can't necessarily... Are there graphics for Secret Warriors? You'd have to be able to find 26 individual issues which are no longer in print. Not comparable. It's not.
Of course it is.
How so?
If you get into Dark Shadows or Doctor Who, Think about that.
They're
There's
all
150 lost episodes of Doctor Who. You're going to tell me you can't watch Doctor Who because you're going to miss that many episodes?
Doctor Who is designed within 2 to 1 episode story arcs for the most part. It's not even packaged as seasons, it's packaged as the story arcs. So you miss one story arc, it may slightly affect. I'm sure there's a couple Dalek ones or the Doctor does Diva Denver or whatever that, play into other ones. I don't know dick all about Doctor Who, but the fact of the matter is that comics are a much more integrated world. Plus, how often are you watching House and you need a background in CSI to understand what the fuck is happening?
Background in CSI.
But it happens in comics all the time. You're reading a book about the Hulk and suddenly Johnny Come Lately shows up and it's like, Heroes for Hire? Who the fuck are these people?
Well, let's go back to the Doctor Who thing. When they rebuilt Stark Resilient, was it necessary to know what happened with World's Most Wanted? Not at all. All you needed to know was he lost his business, now he's rebuilding it. Because the villain that was in Most Wanted is gone. The thing he needed to accomplish in Most Wanted is accomplished. A new story.
Yes, but you know what? In order to read the current line of Iron Man, you've needed to understand Extremis. You need to know the history of the Stains.
Nah, they don't talk about Extremis.
But they played
anymore.
into it. He had the whole...
Barely.
He died and came back. It definitely got played into. Lost memories. He made love to Pepper Potts and forgot about it because he died because of the Extremis. That's totally necessary.
He didn't die because of the Extremis.
No, but it was played into. That was the beginning of the
He was
burnout.
losing his mind because he deliberately erased itself. That happened way after Extremis.
But Extremis was also brought up into
after.
that.
I mean, it was mentioned. It wasn't a huge part of the story.
That's when he started technologically changing himself, and they showed that to be a miserable idea, which is fine. But my point is that all these things played into. You have to know who the Stains are, which is a huge background, because that was only the last villain.
You don't need the whole background. Their father fucked with him. He was a business rival. Whoopity shit. That's all you need to know. They were business rivals. Why do you need any more than that?
You're saying this because you know all this, dude.
Business rival. Business rival. Daughter of business rival. Whoopity shit.
You're wrong. I'm sorry, you're wrong. Because
I'm not fucking wrong.
The fact of the matter is, dude, is that you've read all these
You're
things.
over-justifying it is what it is.
Why I justify it? I don't give a shit. But the fact of the matter is that you've read all these things. If you were expected to pick up a comic today...
All they have to do is have one caption that says, when my father was your business rival, and that... How does that not cover everything you could possibly know? You don't need to know that Stain was the Ironmonger. You have no need to know that. That does not affect anything happening in the rebuilding of Stark Resilient.
Yeah, but it's going to get brought up. And it does.
So then you go look it up.
Not
you
everyone
talk to
is
a
like
friend.
you.
You talk to a buddy who reads comics. There's nobody on the planet who reads comics all by themselves and never fucking associates with another comics fan. Nobody.
How old were you when you bought your
14.
first comic? 14.
And I found Brian Sheffield, Dan, you, Dave Clark. I found 6 people that I knew directly in school that I could talk to about it and say, Dan, what the fuck is a Teen Titan?
I didn't know that at that point, actually.
Yeah.
But
Dan was a huge Teen Titans fan.
Fair enough.
He already knew. I didn't. I asked him, and that was the end of that.
that's not the case. It's a much more complex.
It's complex because you want everything in the universe to be complex.
I do not.
You fucking well do.
The
you
Muppets?
always add shit on top of every argument you ever use.
True. But I don't necessarily appreciate when things I'm trying to enjoy are complex. Sometimes I want a pie to be a goddamn pie. It doesn't need to be fucking Tetris.
Tetris.
The fact of the matter, though, is that if you were a kid going to buy your first comic book and you flip through it, you're not necessarily buying one in this day and age because there are convoluted and confusing and self-involved. And that's undeniable. What was the first book you bought? Do you remember?
It was a Spider-Man book. It was an amazing Spider-Man. It had Hobgoblin on the cover. I don't remember the exact number. But this happened in a weird time because there were also Marvel Saga and Handbook of the Marvel Universe on the rack at the time.
Fair enough.
So I'm hardly a typical new reader.
You also have to acknowledge the fact that you are more likely than the average person, when you get interested in something, to go back and research it to a higher degree.
Well, sure.
Fair enough.
But that's me.
Yes.
But I'm saying it's not necessary to go back. If you want to, you can. If you're curious and confused, you can go find it out. But it's not always 100% necessary to know all this shit.
Not all of it, fine. But a large chunk of it. Because in order to appreciate... Let's go back to Spider-Man. Your first book was a Spider-Man, which was convoluted then. But it doesn't even remotely compare to now.
No, it was very basic then.
Now, you're talking about a guy who's just teamed up with the Fantastic Four, and the weirdness that's floating around in that book with the friggin' moloids and the talking head thing and the giant gargoyle thing and the brain trust, and he's taking the place of his best friend who's the dead Fantastic Torch. Like, good God! That's... And you need a lot to understand that. I'm sorry, it's not...
That one's pretty rough, but you don't see Marvel restarting their entire lines.
True, but you know what? DC's worse. Like, your
And when
first
they
Batman book?
when they did restart their entire line, in a whole new parallel line, which we've already talked about, they jumped in feet first, told some awesome stories, and then let it fall to shit.
Wait, Heroes
Instead
Reborn?
of holding... Huh?
Heroes Reborn you're talking about?
Ultimates.
Okay.
Instead of holding to their line of recreating things from scratch so that it makes sense and it's all good, they didn't have enough discipline to fucking run it the way it should be run.
But the difference is that they didn't touch their core books. They put out a second book.
Yeah.
Which I would totally acknowledge if you made that argument that DC should have just revamped. But the fact of the matter is, let's take Batman. That's an unholy nightmare to try and understand right now. There's 6 Robins floating around at the same
They're
goddamn
not 6
time.
Robins, and you know it. Don't exaggerate.
All right, there's Damian.
Yeah.
There's Dick Bat.
Who hasn't been Robin in forever, so
But
it's
they're
not
all,
relevant.
They're all discussing the fact that they used to be Robin and this and that, so you have to acknowledge that there's a certain level of understanding required there.
Yeah, but they come right out and say it. You used to be Robin. How did you handle this? So what? If
The
you want to
average
read a
reader doesn't
Robin
even know the
adventure with
order.
Dick being Robin, who cares?
Dude, look at the cover of Batman Incorporated. And the number of convoluted nightmares just on the cover. But you've literally got...
Just on the cover. Well, we've got the second Batman, some random schmo, Catwoman. I mean, this is international, so you pick this up and you know that you're dealing with, incorporated.
So you don't know.
Don't know what.
You don't know what you're dealing with. You just think, oh, there's a lot of heroes in here. And they don't even develop any of them, explain half of them. You don't even know the names.
Which is why it's a shit book. And then, and we've been saying that forever. They let this guy run rampant, not sleeping for 50 hours, taking PCP to get ideas, which is true in his own fucking autobiography.
I have
Thank
not
you very
read it.
much.
I'm required to take your word on that. You cannot take for granted the fact that you understand the history. So you cannot
I'm not.
understand.
I'm looking at it from a completely practical standpoint. You do not need to know when Dick was Robin to know that he was Robin. There was one then, there's a new one now. Who gives a shit? Why does it matter?
Because they're all in there. They're all talking about it. You've got Jason Todd as the Red Hood. You've got Red Robin. You've got Damian Robin. You've got Dick Bat. You've got the Spoiler. You've got Knight and Squad. It's like, Jesus fucking wet. Shut the fuck up. Kill a couple of people. Have a coat. Beat up a bad guy. And end on everybody smiling and laughing.
That's not a bad fucking plan.
No, it's not. But that's not what
But it's
they're
not
doing.
relevant.
It is, because right now, the movies are out, things are hot, and everything is an unholy terror to try and understand.
It does not matter because nobody going to the movies. I have read retailer reports over and over and over again about the effect that fucking movies have on sales, and they are zero.
Which should tell you
They are
something about the
completely
book.
zero. No, they say people aren't even coming in.
Because they don't understand them.
Do you have any idea how circular you just went right there?
My point is simply that they are trying
If
to
somebody
reach out to
sees a
boys.
movie
Right.
and doesn't go in a comic shop, they can't know it's too convoluted to get into.
You know what? All you gotta do is go to a Stop and Shop, son.
No, you really can't. There's like 6 comics left in Stop and Shop.
And none of them make a lick of sense.
I don't even know. The last one I saw, the last time I was in there, I saw Sonic, which is up to 120 issues. So
Are
it
you
must
serious?
be making
Apparently they need to revamp that. That's the big fucking move. Is Sonic's #1 all over again. The return of Knuckles. That's the big move.
And I saw a Wonder Woman in there once, and I saw a Batman and a Spider-Man in there
Yeah, I've
once.
seen Spider-Man Cap once or twice. I'm not implying that you can get a great run of comics. My simple point, dude, is that you're not 8. You don't. I'm not justifying their decision. I don't even know if it's a good idea, but I do understand the logic behind it because it's impossible to keep building this audience when there's so much history that's. It's hard to step into a comic book now. It really is. You have a mind for them and a love for them that the average person doesn't have. Then you take into the fact that you've read an insane, and let me quote that, insane amount of them.
Several thousand, yes, I understand that.
And beyond which you've studied, you've read Marvel Saga, you've read Who's Who, you've watched movies that people don't even like, Challenge of the Super Friends. You know stuff that the average person doesn't know. You know stuff that the average comic fan doesn't know. So when you go to a book, and think about how many times you pick up a book, and they're like, Bill, who the fuck is this dude? And I have to sit there and go, oh, ha ha, that, because I'm a jackass who remembers the pointless crap, and then I have to ask you about a popular guy I don't even know who it is. It's a screwed up idea. And what happens when we die?
So I don't see, they can't just write stories differently. I mean, they don't stop, well, they do restart franchises on
Constantly.
movies, actually. I can't say that with accuracy.
The other thing is you're not acknowledging the fact that they've been doing this throughout comics, just differently. Alright, this is bigger, and they're making more of a big deal, and they're pushing #1s and doing everything that's jackass about the comic industry. But who was the original Green Lantern?
Who is now Sentinel, who went back to being Green Lantern after he was being Sentinel.
Exactly.
Alan Scott.
Who's the original Starman?
That I never paid much attention to.
But my point is that all these things have happened. The original Charleston Blue Beetle isn't the one you're even missing now.
Yes, that's true.
So comics has always done this to degrees. They've just never done it as this giant annoying event thing with 52 #1s to purchase.
I'm not purchasing 52 fucking books,
I'm
man.
not doubting you. But my point is, the fact of the matter is that they've always done that kind of thing.
Are there any naked pictures of her?
I haven't a clue.
Oh, you should. By the way, kids, we're watching Sin City. It's Brittany Murphy.
Who's dead now?
Yeah, it's a damn shame.
But they have always revamped and changed things when they felt like it. But the problem is, for years they didn't respect continuity at all. But now continuity is such a religious word that they're trapped by their own creativity. Superman is a perfect example. One day he could eat the planet, crap it back out in a better format, and they're like, that's just Superman.
No, that's never that. He's been. They had the crisis
For
To-
continuity.
Yes.
Yeah.
To straighten all that shit out, because you had 52 universes. You had 3 different Supermen who looked 3 different ways that didn't make any kind of sense. You had to justify why somebody wasn't in a fucking wheelchair throwing a batarang.
Yep.
And they did it once, and they called it even, and it's been cool.
But once they introduce continuity to that degree and lock everything out, like Crisis caused this in a weird kind of way, because then suddenly you were locked into what everyone else did before you. And the fact of the matter is not everyone is a great writer, not everyone is creative, and not everyone gives a shit about the next person who has to write.
But all they've ever had to do is just not contradict something that happened before.
But some
And
people make
that's
it more
why you have
convoluted.
editors. That's
Not
why
every editor
editors
is talented.
exist. That's why they're there.
But You yourself, as an obsessive comic fan, can't always remember the details. An editor reading 6 books
I'm not getting paid to do it.
That I'll give you.
If this was my 8-hour-a-day job, you goddamn right I'd know every detail.
I believe...
If eating depended on this shit, fuck yeah, I would.
Actually, I'm sorry, I believe Eternity Century is left-handed. Oh, good. I got Editor Douche this week.
Editor Douche.
It is a seriously complex thing that we're dealing with here. And the fact of the matter is that if they're trying to revamp it, there's a logic. I'm not justifying this in any way. I'm fighting with you because you're so adamantly against it, and there's a logic to it you have to respect. Because it is hard, and you need to acknowledge that. Because that's why the industry is suffering in a lot of ways, is that people can't just step up and pick up a book or understand things.
They could straighten things out. If they really wanted to, they really could straighten things out.
To some degree. Some things are really screwed up.
In far less radical ways.
That I'll give you, absolutely. But certain books are seriously screwed up at this point. Trying to revamp Batman with what's going on is very challenging.
Well, the first thing you do is you get fucking Grant Morrison off it. You leave,
Well,
make him leave all Batman alone. Make him leave all Batman alone. No more fucking Batboy for you, Grant. You Scottish fucking
People
shite.
like it.
How do they like it?
Because they do. Because people are allowed to like whatever they want. What we're dealing with, though, is the fact that you cannot just wash stuff away the way you used to. It's like, oh, new writer, new whatever.
No, they don't even have to do that. If Denny O'Neil came back and took over for Grant Morrison,
Right.
he would write one big story, 4, 6, 8 issues, where they would hash out who's going to be fucking Batman. They would fire all the assholes in Japan and Venezuela and fucking Scotland and wherever the fuck the African guy was, Zimbabwe. Did they even mention his country in this issue?
I don't remember, honestly.
Well, they would fire all that shit because he realized that his mission has always been personal. And unless he was with the Justice League, he hasn't really given a fuck outside of Gotham. And that's accurate, isn't it?
So sometimes, depending on who's writing. I mean, sometimes he has more of a worldview, sometimes he has a very...
Every once in a while, he runs out to Egypt to go deal with Ra's al Ghul. Yes, that's true.
Or Russia for Mother Bear, or this or that.
Mother Bear?
Whatever. Remember in that Batman Confidential?
Yes, I remember that.
The fact of the matter is, though, is that this is hard. And when you... It's
But
hard
these
enough.
are what... straightening things out are what they're being paid to do. They're getting paid... If they don't want continuities, if they don't want to have a continuity, if they can't get writers who will deal with what has gone before, even if they don't respect it, then do like the fucking Europeans do and have an annual album of stories. Yeah.
I don't know what you're referring to. I mean, I don't doubt you. I just
like Tintin isn't a monthly. Right?
Tintin? No, it was just like random books.
Yeah.
Each one is a book.
Yeah.
And they are all in the same continuity in the sense that none of them behave.
But they're not numbered. They're just stories.
Right, fair enough. So there's no out. But people are changing personality and cast members and this and that and relationships, which has never had. Captain Haddock is always an alcoholic. The detectives are always confused. The scientist is always bumping into something. Tintin always has crappy hair. Your Tintin, you go for Tintin A and you buy Tintin 77, which don't even compare. You're getting Tintin, which isn't true with Batman.
But I'm saying if continuity has made such a horrible, just fucking don't have any anymore.
Yeah,
don't restart continuity because in 10 more years we're going to be right back here again.
You know what? But then you'd have a fan base which would include you and me. Because that's what I'm saying. I'm not justifying what they're doing. Because I like continuity. It frustrates me when suddenly a character can fly and then can't and then can again. And that has happened without continuities.
I see continuity more as plot developments rather than... I mean, if somebody came up with a reason somebody can fly now where they previously hasn't, then that's not ruining continuity. If they don't explain it, that's not respecting what's gone before, and that becomes a continuity error. But that's one we could go on just as much as...
It's a challenge. It's simply a matter of they're trying something. I don't like it, because I don't think that the number one revamp thing has ever worked out particularly well.
It hasn't. We can see. I mean, Newsarama, I'm not going to pull it up and quote it or shit like
Paraphrasing Newsarama.
But they had a very long article about how many times people have tried to start from scratch and ended up in the exact same position.
Certain books have so many number ones at this point. Hulk being a prime example.
Hulk is fucking irritating with its number ones.
And that's a book that should have been close to 1,000 at this point.
No, it still would have been in the 600s.
I don't think so.
Because it took over from Tales to Astonish, and that was only in the 100s in the 60s. So, and Batman and Detective were in 39, 40, and they're only in the 800s. So, no,
all right, I'll
mathematically speaking, you're fucking wrong.
Yeah! You get a point.
I got you, finally.
Hallelujah. Prove the rev wrong. No, and it is, but at the same time, like, I don't think that 14-year-old tech Jedi could come into a comic book shop with the same experience, or and you have to go into a comic book shop because you can't go to a laundromat or a Five and Dime,
and
that's anymore.
And that's definitely an irritating thing, because I mean, how much does Archie sell? Archie sells over 100,000 copies every single issue, because it sits right there at the checkout for the kid impulse buy. Get the mother gets them to shut up. 100,000 every single issue, every single month. What's Iron Man at?
Half that? A third?
36.
36.
36, and it's a top 25 fucking book.
You know, a big difference, though, and I hate to go back to this since we just stopped screaming at each other. The fact of the matter is that you can pick up any Archie, and Archie's like People magazine.
This month he did that, next
read.
month he did that,
Right.
and last month he did that.
With Iron Man, you have to have read the one before for the most part. You have to have read you're not going to
But the thing is, they're not there for people to have discovered that themselves and made their own fucking choice about whether it's too bullshit or not.
But what you're forgetting is that they used to be there and they're no longer there because people stopped buying them because of that, in that environment.
Well, I mean,
because
maybe.
Think about how much comics have stopped being in supermarkets and these things in your lifetime.
If they were still at the Cumberland Farm, I'd go to the Cumberland Farm and get my comics. Fuck that. I got them for years at Kenny General, for Christ's sake.
Yes, but you also
if RJ Julia sold them, I would buy them there, because across the street, 15 years before Julia opened, I got them there.
No, I totally acknowledge that, but it's also hard
when I wanted old shit,
books.
I went down the Arrow's attic down in Essex, across from the. I went to a guy's fucking attic to buy the attic of an antique shop to buy old comics. That's where I went.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with any of this, but what I'm saying is that you cannot, like, the kid in the supermarket buys one, doesn't have the same enjoyable experience with one random comic that you did when you were 14.
Or maybe he does. We don't know that. They aren't there for him to find out for himself.
But they were, and they didn't. That's why they're no longer there. If they were selling like Archie, they'd still be there.
Well, that's a chicken and egg thing, really.
To a degree, but I don't think you're going to, like, think about how cool Secret Warriors covers are. I don't want to harp on this book. It's actually been improving for me because it's about to end, which is frustrating. But think of how, like, if you were 14, you saw, like, Nick Fury and Dum Dum Dugan fighting giant guys that look like giant snakes and hot chicks holding giant machine guns. You're like, I'm buying that motherfucker. That's a book I'll enjoy. And you pick it up and you're like, there's like political infighting and guys sitting around tables talking about the weight of the nuclear world power. And Leonardo da Vinci's explaining how he can lead them to even greaterness. And you're like,
that's S.H.I.E.L.D.
But no, he showed up. Remember?
Leonardo da Vinci showed up in fucking Secret
Or
Warriors?
whoever the head of that S.H.I.E.L.D. showed up in this one.
Yeah. So
I am right. And you'd be like,
Well, and but that comes to another thing. There's this never-ending need now in comics for everything to tie back to everything. And
it's true.
It's fucking nuts. Nobody even, until 2000, I didn't know Tony's father's name was fucking Howard. Now he's everywhere and he's involved in everything.
Good old Howie Stark.
Because instead of just telling me what Iron Man did today after his scrambled eggs with the repulsor blast, he got out and he went out and bought a Coke, and then he fought fucking AIM, and then he banged some reporter chick, and then he went to bed.
That was awesome. I totally enjoyed that.
I'd love to read an Iron Man like that. I don't give a fuck that Howard saved the world 30 years prior.
I kind of miss out that I grew up in the post-alcoholic Tony Stark days. I bet you it was a lot more fun when he was a woman. You're like, damn, Iron Man is shit.
Well, that depends exactly when, though, because I just recently read some Alcohol Days Iron Man when he was at the end, man, before Demon in a Bottle started.
Drunk. So I mean,
Just before Demon in a Bottle started, he was out on the streets, hanging out with some heroin addict. I mean, literally, seriously.
The subtlety of comic books.
I'm like, really, Tone?
Creepy.
How much better does a movie get when half of its cast is hookers?
And that note just horrifies even greater. All right, so we do have a considerable number of books we have to try and get to. So,
come on, I'm having fun.
But the whole revamp thing, yeah, I totally agree that it seems unnecessary. I'm just not as anti as you are because there is a logic to what they're doing. You may not like to acknowledge that logic, which is your right, but you can't pretend it's not there at all. Your experience is not everyone's.
But there are guys at the shop who aren't as deep into it and haven't been into it nearly as long. Radovich has only been in it 2 years.
Okay.
Right? 2 lousy years.
How old is Radovich?
Radovich is like 22.
So at 20 he picked up his first comic book?
Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah. And you know what? He buys fucking everything. And he loves everything.
How did he get into it? Iron Man? One of the movies?
He talked about today how someone he knew got into it, but he didn't mention himself. Should definitely find that out.
Because if it is a movie, I'm going to laugh hysterically. Well, at 2000, that's a logical possibility.
2008.
2008. Yeah, so that's a highly logical possibility.
The point, where was I?
We were talking about...
oh, yeah.
You got that from
Yes. But Dave hasn't been reading that long, and he doesn't read that many books. But when he finds something he doesn't understand, he asks, and we tell him, and he's like, oh! And then he makes his own decision about, that's bullshit. But now he's asked. He doesn't just go, I don't know. He's not afraid of it. And the implication when they say these
in a
things,
comic book shop that you're using as your example.
Yeah, but you got to remember who this guy is. I mean, he's a nice guy. I like him a lot, but he hasn't got a lot of experience with books, so he makes a lot of bad decisions on books.
Well, don't we all? I mean, most of my stuff came from dollar boxes, so there's a lot
he
of
liked
trial
Haunt,
and error.
for fuck's sake.
He like what?
Haunt.
I've never even tried that. No, I too understand, obviously, and I don't like the idea of change costumes and change backgrounds, because if I don't like it and they mess with somebody, I mean, I'm still pissed what they did to Green Arrow right when I was enjoying it. I loved Green Arrow Black Canary. That was a fun book. That was one of the ones I was thinking going back to collecting, actually, is Green Arrow.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because I used to have a really nice run. It's not a character you have an overly huge interest in.
But that last run was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I loved it. And I loved the Judd Winnick stuff in the Green Arrow before that. So I'm like, like I said, when we were talking about things that I might consider, that was one that was on my, as a possibility for me. Because it's also something I could collect.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't have to suddenly... Because I'm talking since Grell. I'm not talking going All-Star Comics number 4. You know, that's a little out of my price range. But with Green Arrow, with that, after the Brightest Day Green Arrow, that revamp, I loathed it.
Ugh. I could not deal with it.
So there's a very good chance that I'm going to dislike a lot of these things. And the fact of the matter is, when that happens, you have what you're happening now, because they just did that last year, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, does the Magical Forest of Wonder not work out for the average comic buying fan?
Well, that was just because it was just too silly and pointless. It was there because Swamp Thing needed it to be there to come back to be the white savior.
Yes,
no, fuck that. Why does Green Arrow cross over with that at all?
They're both green in many ways?
Doesn't fucking count.
You think Swamp Thing would have a problem with them? Like, these arrows are wood. You've killed my siblings to make your weapon.
If you want to do a change, that's fine. Just tell the guy who's writing it, look, we're not sure we like this direction. We'd love to have you on board for a change of direction. Just move forward in a different way. That would be awesome sauce.
I see. I'm not disagreeing.
Hold on.
What do you got?
Remember the amazingness and the godlike nature of the first 92 Batman animated series.
Yeah.
You remember how fucking amazing that was?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second Batman series came in, and it was alright. It was watchable.
I couldn't tell the difference. You know this. I enjoyed watching the cartoon when it first came out. That's the extent of my knowledge on Batman animated series.
But it was the second one was watchable. And then The Batman, with its revamp toward a hipper, trendier audience, came around. Right?
Right.
And I borrowed it from you. Did you?
Oh, the one I gave to the kid. Yeah. I didn't watch it.
You didn't watch it. Well, it was outright fucking dookie. It was way too trendy. It was
you also had Batman 2099 in there.
It was way too in the time. You know, that's not that. Whatever happens, that series is not going to age well.
Okay.
Because it tries to be in our time now. You know, it was like if they were still writing. If Spider-Man still walked around with an actual Walkman, listening to fucking Culture Club, you would look at that when you were reading it, and I was like, this came out in 2011?
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. You know what a perfect example is? What you're trying to describe?
And you laugh when you read a book from 1988, and you read a dialogue bubble that says, I'm a man without conviction. Yeah.
Ghostbusters references.
You laugh when you do that because you're like, that was ages ago. But at the time, they thought they were being hip.
They were being hip. No, not real hip, but
right. But
Miami Vice hip. But
and 5 years later, no, it's like I don't give a fuck that this guy is listening to Culture Club because I don't listen to Culture Club anymore.
You used to listen to Culture Club?
No,
you just.
It's an example.
It's a bad example.
Is it in quotes, man? And put quotations around everything I just said.
You can sing along to the song. I didn't know that was a
You couldn't get away from the goddamn song just because you had no electrical devices in the house.
That's not true. We had an 8-track player.
See? They didn't put Culture Club on 8-track, and if they did, you wouldn't have bought it.
I can't argue with you there.
But I actually listened to, on-air radio, so I got the damn thing shoved down my throat most of the time.
I do know the song. I mean, I saw Wedding Singer.
See? Well, I mean, there you go.
Is that a different one? I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't watch it. It was probably in that.
What was I about to say? So to kind of example, not quite what you're talking about there, but the whole revamp thing is the difference between one of my all-time favorite books, Jonah Hex, and Hex.
Ha! They tried to revamp it and make it modern and put it in a post-apocalyptic area, and it died because nobody was really into westerns in the 80s. The 80s were a bad time for westerns of any sort.
Yes.
There were no western TV shows anymore, and there hadn't been for a very long time.
Very few movies. Pale
Rider.
Very
very few movies.
Which is probably one of my least favorite Clinton films.
High Plains Drifter was still the 70s.
Early, actually. That was,
Yeah.
High
So there was no
Plains
westerns in the 80s.
Drifter.
John Wayne had been dead for 20 years at that point.
Gun Guns.
Oh yeah, but
Which is not helping the argument much.
that was like 89. So
Yeah, that was very-
most of the 80s had no fucking cowboys in them. So Hex,
sad time for America.
pretty much, yes, it was, and especially for my pop
And me.
and you. But it's the same thing. They tried to make. They're like, all right, well, Hex is no longer relevant because nobody deals with westerns anymore. Mad Max is a big thing right now. Let's put Hex into the
True.
future.
It did follow that. No, and the fact of the matter is now when people are doing Jonah Hex, they're going back and they're doing Western. No one is like, hey, I want to see a Hex miniseries.
Because people are back to realizing that a story is a story is a story, and a Western story is a really good milieu to put a story in.
But the other aspect, of course, is that there's a wider audience to different things right now.
Yeah.
You can do a Western comic and have it sell decently. I think Truman and Lansdale's Jonah Hex did fairly well, actually, at first.
Yeah.
By the third one, I don't think they were doing quite as well. But the first miniseries, and I believe the second one with the Johnny and Edgar Winter villains, kids, I'm not making that up, did quite all right.
Well, the other thing is, sure, if you want them to understand what's going on, that's great. Tell them what's going on. If you want to start from scratch, that's fine. The thing is, they literally came out and said, which I haven't mentioned before, they came out and said they want to make it relevant to current themes, concerns, and events.
And that makes me a tad nervous.
That does, because you end up with the Walkman Duran Duran problem.
No.
You know?
If you break it down, and I think this is true, write decent stories and end them. And I understand, like, we've actually debated the other end of this before, like the leaving things in comics and whatnot. Introduce new villains or side characters. Replacing heroes or killing major things isn't always in your best interest.
No. And I've been a huge advocate of the done in one previously.
Yeah, you know what? I think more books need to do that. If you look at what's going on in Green Lantern right now, they're tearing through a miniseries in their books.
Yeah.
War of the Green Lanterns is flying by.
And it's about time,
Considering,
even though it's taking 3 different series, 3 different months.
But it's not 3 different stories that are kind of co-involved. The characters are carrying over an issue. It's so much better done than what they've been doing lately. And it's impressive, and it's you don't mind.
No, not at all. It's a lot of fun, though. I'm not giving them up. I'm going to check it out. I'm going to see. I'm going to go in there. You know, a lot of people are calling it cautious optimism.
Yeah.
I'm just calling it caution right now.
Hey, you know, some of them will be good, inevitably. Some of them will not.
I mean, if they keep Grant Morrison around... I'm sorry, it's just too much fun to fuck with him. I'm going to read his biography, because I have to see what's going on in this guy's fucking head here, man. I mean, he literally said, I read a review of it on Wired. Said he stayed up for 50 hours straight.
For which book?
While taking PCP. To get ideas for,
Invisibles or Doom Patrol?
It was either Invisibles or... Yeah, it was either Invisibles or Doom Patrol.
Yeah, which explains a lot.
A whole lot.
Nope.
Of course, it could have been Final Crisis, too. The thing's called Super Gods. It's gonna be on my Amazon wish list soon.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
I think we played this one out, though.
Yeah, you know, I mean, in the end, we've accomplished nothing, which is our goal.
Which is, yes, this is pretty much
it's on our
where
manifesto,
we live.
people. It's what you're looking at is there's going to be new comics, and hopefully some of them will be good, and inevitably some of them will not. And the things that fuck with core items probably won't last. 1 or 2 may.
Somebody's gonna find a way to go back.
You know what? Superman doesn't have electrical powers anymore, people.
Yeah, they tried to make him, super cool and different.
Azrael is not Batman.
That's right. Well, I'm not sure they ever planned that he would be
No,
permanently.
but you know what? I mean, who knows? If it had taken, like, wildfire, who's to say?
Yeah, they would have found a way for Bruce Wayne to do something else.
You know? You don't... Or they might have... Like, it's not like people didn't like Alan Scott in the time. You don't know. Some things take. Some don't. And that is the nature of comics.
Yep. We'll find out. We'll find out very soon.
We'll find out with some. Some we'll never know.
There are a lot I'm not going to bother with. I mean, I'll go back. I'll restart all my core books that I actually want.
Right. All your bats.
If they do a new Emerald Knights #1, I won't be getting that.
Really, you're enjoying Green? Like this last one?
Because it's in the arc of War of the Green Lanterns.
Ah, I see.
I wasn't really. If you remember properly,
ready to
I was ready to kill it.
Yep.
And then this came in, and I'm like, well, this is an interesting story, and I gotta know.
It has been done very well.
Yes. So, we'll get to that next episode.
But do try to pick up the first Green Arrow one for me.
First Green Arrow. Oh, yes. Yes.
You're doing a revamp of that.
We'll see. Well, we'll decide when we see who's writing it, right? If it's more Judd Winnick, maybe. If it's more JT Krull...
Hey, maybe if they, well, you yourself said, perhaps they'll take him outside and be like, you know what, Magic Forest, we're done with that.
Actually, I'm pretty sure they are done with the Magic Forest now.
So, maybe he'd be great without having to deal with that stuff. Maybe he didn't like it either. You never know.
Yeah. But we'll leave all that for the future. Having established that, kids, have a great night.
Bless you, fuckers.
I just set up yours, baby.
The Mean Geek is recorded live at the Reverend Mad Duck's apartment whenever the hell we can get to it. You can find us on iTunes, Podcast Alley, Facebook, Comic Space, our own site, www.themeangeek.com. Subscribe to us through RSS, and most importantly, find us as a proud member on the Comics Podcast Network. Contact us directly through email at themeanergeek@gmail.com.